Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started in about 2 minutes. Welcome, welcome. Hope you're having a wonderful day. We will be getting started in about 2 minutes. Okay, well, it looks like the number of participants getting signed in has slowed down, so we will go ahead and get this kicked off this afternoon. We are so glad for you to be joining us to go over some basics of assessment building in our AWARE program. We want to make sure that you are all very aware that this is going back to the basics this afternoon. We have recently done webinars over new releases and updates and things like online testing. So today we are really focused on building the assessment, some different ways that you can start that, and the different components that you can add to the assessments. Anything you would like to add at this point, Jenny?
Sorry, I was muted. No, that's perfect. Yeah, we just want to, kind of let people know this is new, nothing new and fancy. It's just basic assessment building, because we know y'all are all heavily involved in that at this point in your year. And so we may show you something you hadn't seen before, but the focus of the webinar is just basic test building.
Yes. So this afternoon, myself, Tara Whedon, and Jenny Strack are going to be guiding you through some basic assessment building in AWARE. Jason wishes he was joining us this afternoon, but he is not feeling his best, so he's getting a little bit of rest. So we will be leading you guys through this today. We will also be monitoring the Q&A. This webinar is being recorded and it will be accessible in about 24 hours. As a participant, whether you are live or not, you will be getting an email with this link. It will also be accessible on our YouTube page for you to go and search and find this webinar as well as other webinars that might meet your needs. Again, please use the Q&A window this afternoon to ask questions relevant to what we are reviewing. So we want to make sure that the questions in the Q&A are directly related to the content that we are covering so that we can stay focused. Right now, it is only Jenny and I that will be addressing that. So a team of 2 to deliver your information and respond to your questions. We just want to make sure they're nice and focused, so we can get everyone the best quality answer in the time that we have today. If you have specific questions to things that you're experiencing at your campus or in your district, you're welcome to send us an email at training@eduphoria.net, and we can respond to those inquiries at a later time. So for our agenda today, we are going to be going over the different ways that you can generate a test. So our test creation options, then we'll cover how to add your own questions. So building some items from scratch and those different test item types. Then we will be demoing how to use the item bank that you have access to. And finally, we will be going over administration options. So again, we really are going back to the basics of how AWARE and building assessments function. So I'm going to go ahead and jump out of our presentation and into our software. So this afternoon, I am demoing from an administrative account. And I will be going into our AWARE school object. And on my tab at the left, I am going to go into assessments. So we can see we have some different assessment options available. We have create a new blank test, copy existing test, create new quick test key, and create new test from zip file. So I'm actually going to start with this bottom option, create new test from zip file. So this option is not going to be something that everyone is using. This is going to be something specific to some users that have access to something called Exam View. So if you are a teacher or if you are a curriculum person that knows some of your teachers have access to Exam View, this is something that will be very helpful for you to quickly generate assessments inside of Aware. For help on this object, you can use this hyperlink and it takes you to a help article walking you through some general guidance. And this section here, a few things to note, gives you some ideas of items that you might need to go in and adjust once you have done your zip upload. So again, this is utilizing something called Exam View, which is not something everyone has, but many of you do. And there is one specific type of file from Exam View that is utilized here. So that's Exam View Web CT CE 4-6 Visa 3-4. So with Exam View, you have 4 file options, and this is the file type that is supported. Once you have your file ready, you will click anywhere on this screen, including the Choose File button, and you will be prompted to locate and upload your zip file.
And so as far as Exam View goes, you may not think you have Exam View, but if you check your online textbook, many publishing companies utilize Exam View as their test building software. So you may not realize you have Exam View because you don't ever see Exam View written anywhere big. But if you're using an online textbook from one of the major publishers, it's quite possible you do have access to this Exam View file type.
Thank you, Jenny. And so this was selected because it got us the most bang for our buck. So the investment for building this Exam View was something that we knew was more accessible to you guys. So this is where we started. I don't know the future development plans for extending this and making it more accessible. So I do see a question in the Q&A related to that. So I'm unclear what future development in this looks like. Jenny, do you know anything different than that?
I don't. I was just typing, not that I'm aware of it, but I wouldn't rule it out. This, again, we thought would catch more. Of course, we would love to just say, oh, we've got a test, it's a PDF, and bam, let's import that test and it will work. Unfortunately, though it may sound simple on our end from a development standpoint, apparently it's not. And so right now, again, we went with the Exam View option because we felt like it would catch more customers than, you know, some other solutions. But right now, this is the only one we're utilizing.
So notice that little column that I had here has disappeared. If that ever happens to you, next to your school object name, like we see Aware up here, we have this arrow and we can pop that section back out. So if it ever disappears on you, just check for your arrow and you can toggle that open and closed. I always think it's convenient to hide it for what I call screen real estate. And we sometimes need a little bit more. The next option to create a test is to do create new quick test key. So this is going to look familiar. If you've been building assessments, you are going to start out the exact same way. And just so I can go and find this and get rid of it later, I tagged my initials since we are just building a demonstration. I'm going to follow my default and tag this with 8th grade science. You have your performance values that you can change on any assessment that you generate. So whatever your PLC team or your administration has said need to be your cut points, you can include that for an individual assessment. Again, I am building from a district user, so I can select what type of assessment I am building. So let's say for this example, I'm building a unit check. Now I can add my courses, so I can associate this with 8th grade science. I can even add multiple courses. If I know some 7th grade content is relevant to this 8th grade unit, I can have that included there. And then I can decide what campuses this is going to be associated with. I can add different grade levels if I need to see different campuses present. But since I tagged this to 8th grade, it's pulling all the campuses in my district that have 8th grade rostered.
So a note on that, if you are a teacher building a test, it defaults to the teacher test type. And then also, if you are a campus admin or a teacher who is assigned to a specific campus, you don't have to choose your campus because it defaults to the campus that you're assigned to. If you are a campus level admin who has access to multiple campuses, you'll still need to choose which campuses you want the test to work for. So you may not see that associated campuses choice option, you'll just see the campus associated.
And in a moment, we will be seeing this screen again when we build a blank test. So we will go over these steps again in just a moment. So once I have all the information input, my title, subject, grade level, and the information here on the right, then I will click Build Quick Key. This is where it's going to look different if you're used to building a blank test. So now I'm on my quick key builder, and I am going to be inputting the types of items that I want on this assessment. So I'm going to build a 5-item assessment. I want 3 items. So I'm going to change my quantity to 3 that are a selected response, like a traditional multiple choice. And I want each of those to have 4 answered choices for my students. Then I'm going to click Add Rule. And now I would like 1 question. I'm going to change my question type to constructed response. So this, maybe I want students to draw a diagram. Maybe I want them to write a paragraph. And with this type of question, I would be using some type of rubric to score my students. And in this case, I am okay with that range being from 0 to 4. So I'm going to leave the minimum rubric score at 0 and the maximum rubric score at 4. Notice under each of these, you have a range value that can be included. So the minimum must be between 0 to 8 and the maximum between 1 and 9. I'm going to add 1 final rule for this quick test key. And I'm going to keep that quantity at 1. And this time I'm going to select numerical response. So notice here, I can now manipulate what I want that griddable to look like for my students. So if I was generating a Scantron for students to complete, or if they are taking this online, this will be what their griddable looks like. So in this case, I would like a fixed decimal point. I want 4 digits before my decimal, and I'm going to limit this to 2 place values after my decimal. I am not going to turn on allow negatives in this case. So now I have 3 rules. My first rule is for 3 selected response, multiple choice items. My next is for 1 constructed response. And my final rule is for 1 numerical response. And I'm going to create my quick key. This then hops me into my test key tab here at the top of my screen. So the very first information where we did our title, our grade level, that is located on general and can all be updated. I'm going to go back to my test key tab. And here, notice I don't have correct answers selected yet. So I'm going to have to go over to the far right of each item and make those updates as appropriate. So for my first item, I'm going to edit that and set my correct response to C. I'm going to leave my item weight alone. And here I can also tag my standards. So if I click the plus sign, it's going to take me to my standards. So let's say the first question, we're scaffolding some 7th grade content. I'm going to find something from 7.6 and add that standard. And then click my save button. For question 2, I need to go through the same process. I need to click edit, select the appropriate answer. Again, I'm going to leave it weighted at 1, and I need to tag a standard. Remember, on our general information, we included 2 sets of standards. So now I'm going to toggle to my 8th grade, which will be what the rest of my assessment is over. And I'm going to tag a standard there and click save. I'll go through the same step for 3. For 4, I don't have that same correct score because again, this is constructed response. Students are generating their response here, but I can still tag the standard and save that. And then on my 5th item, this is a numerical response. So here I would put in what that numeric response needs to look like from students. And again, I could tag my standards. So right now, there's no information in these questions, but we have a key that students would be able to be scored with. Jenny, anything else I need to address here with quick test key? So essentially what we're doing here is we're just building a key. We can.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm sorry. So we've had several questions about online testing, which we kind of anticipated. That all of that information was covered in the last webinar that we did. There is a recorded version of that webinar in our online help section under the training and webinar section. There are also multiple articles in the online help section about online testing. Check under virtual learning resources, also check on under aware and then online testing. The article in virtual learning resources has numerous videos. And also again, that webinar was done last week. This one is specifically over building the test. It's not over giving the test online.
Okay, so some situations where you might create the quick test key, maybe students already have, or you as a teacher already have a PDF with the questions, you already have a resource that you're used to utilizing, but you want to get that information into Aware. So essentially you would build the quick test key. It just saves you time. You have all this information after just a couple clicks. So that you can quickly generate a way to collect the data, but you already have the questions saved somewhere else. So again, notice our questions are just blank information. We wouldn't print a test booklet from this. So again, if you have a resource that already has the items you would like to show students, this is a quick way to then get the data into Aware so you can analyze it the way you have become familiar analyzing other assessments.
So specific to this question, if you created the questions in Aware, it would automatically generate a key. You do not have to build this key and then add questions. When you add the questions to the test, it builds a key in Aware. So again, this is for a test that's given from an outside source. So not ideal for online testing because the students won't be able to view the questions in Aware. The next type of test that she's going to build, or test type, a couple of test types from now, that is what you would do if you were administering a test online.
Okay. And so you'll see in a minute that the key is automatically built if we add questions. So one other option, I'm back in my panel on the left, is to copy an existing test. So again, I am in an administrative account, so I can see assessments, all of these different test types for wellness checks, for district benchmarks, district-based assessment. So what I would do in this case is I'm going to drill down until I find an assessment that I would like to copy. And then at the bottom here, I'm going to click copy. It's going to take me to that same screen that we started with the quick test key. And here I want to make sure to update my name potentially if there is a year associated. I want to make sure that I can distinguish this. It will go into the new folder for the new year. But if you have an assessment and it says 2018, 2019, you want to make sure that you clarify that now this is a 2020, 2021 assessment. So I'm just going to do that for demonstration purposes. And notice it's pulled over this information that it was a science for 7th grade, that the test type was district-based assessment. So I'm going to leave that alone. And it's already pulled over the associated courses. Since students that took this test might have moved, I have to connect it to a campus again. And notice it's loaded the same middle schools as our previous demonstration because 7th grade is also connected to each of those campuses. So I'm going to select all and go ahead and add those campuses. If for some reason one of these campuses wasn't taking this assessment, I could just click and remove that single campus from there without going back in. And then again, our performance levels, we could set these specifically for this test. And then we would click generate test. And now we have the test without adding items. All of this information has been duplicated from the test that existed prior. So we have basically just done a really fast copy and paste of a former test that now we can use with a different group of students.
So I'd like to just add to that, that this step is really important if you're going to administer a test for multiple years. I know she kind of said that, but I want to emphasize that. If I built the test last year and I want to use it again this year, I have to make a copy of it in the new year. If I don't do that, my data is all going to end up bundled with last year's students' data in last year. And so again, copying tests into the new year is a necessary step if you want to administer the test multiple years. Teachers can also use this tool if they are utilizing our team test option. They create a test. They want to keep a personal copy, but then also share a copy with the team. They can do that. They would need to make a copy of a test and then, sorry, I was reading a question. It's distracting when a question pops up and you're talking. I can't do that well. I can't multitask very well. Anyway, they can like make a copy of a test and then share, a copy or the original with the team so that they kind of maintain a copy. But that's the only reason why a teacher without additional roles and rights would ever need to copy a test. Teachers don't have to copy a test into the next year because it can only be administered to the students who are currently rostered to them. And so that's a little bit of difference. So primarily it's your campus and district level administrators or test builders who are going to utilize this copy feature.
Correct. Okay, so the final way to create an assessment that we're going over today is create a new blank test. So when I click this, we're going to see a very familiar page. So the beginning of our wizard for our general information, we're going to add a title. And we're going to set subject information for this one. I am going to go with English Language Arts, and I'm going to do 7th grade. Again, I can change my performance levels. So this is usually going to be something that's communicated to you by your district or maybe decided upon in your PLC, what you would set these different levels at, and it might change at different points in the year. So just know with each assessment, we can update this information, so you always have control to be able to make that what you need it to be. So I'm going to set this as a unit check. And I am going to associate it with our 7th grade English Language Arts TEKS. Again, since I am building from an admin account, I will connect this to my middle school campuses. So now we've seen this stuff a few times. I hope that I was able to slow down enough so that y'all could capture all of that, because I know at first I was going a little speedily through this. So now I'm going to click generate test. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make this column disappear like I showed y'all earlier just by clicking my little arrow. So I have more screen real estate. Notice I have some tools right here. This show test summary is giving me this column here. It's blank because I have not added any items to my assessment yet. So for right now, I'm going to toggle that off. And once we have added some items, I will turn it back on so that we can see the information that is populated there. It gives you a really beautiful overview of the assessment you're creating. So now to add items, I am going to click our little plus sign. Notice if the test is in a state where I can make edits, this gray will turn blue and say add new item. So what we're about to demonstrate is how to build items from scratch. We're going to go over 3 item types and also how to add your own resource. So just like we saw in the quick test key, our first option is for a selected response. And I'm going to drop down just a little bit. We can do multiple choice or multiple selection. Multiple selection would be if there was more than one correct answer choice for students to select. From here, we can tag standards. So I can go ahead and from my associated course, tag a standard. I could even tag an additional standard. I could update my DOK level if that is relevant for this assessment. And I can change my item weight. Again, we typically recommend keeping your items weighted at 1 for a balanced assessment. Here, I'm going to enter any information I have for the actual question. And then at the bottom is where I would put in my answer choices. So for times purposes, I'm just going to click add response and get us to 4 different responses. This button right here, our radio button, allows us to select the correct response. So in this case, let's go with D as our correct answer. And if I needed to change any of these, I can use these arrows and I can move the responses around. So notice now they're in a different order. And from here, I can click create. So now I have added our first type of item as a selected response to the assessment. Now notice I have 2 plus signs, one above and below my item, so I can pick where I want my next question to go by designating where I click. So I would like my next question to be question 2. I'm going to click add item. And now in my question type, I would like to build a constructed response. So notice I still have access to tag my standards, set a DOK level, set an item weight. So I'm going to set this at 3. I can include my score range from 0 up to 9. I can make this teacher graded. So this would mean that on the Scantron, the teacher had a place to designate the score range from 0 to 4. And notice that it grayed out these options. So I'll build 2 of these so you can see the difference there. And here is where I would put my prompt for the student. So what are they responding to? And down here at the bottom, this is a really great feature to have where you can add your scoring guide. So this is going to be information to communicate to the teacher what does a correct response look like. You can even have keywords to look for in your student response. So this is information for the teacher. The students will not see anything that is included here in the scoring guide area. And then we would click create. So notice this right here is what the students would see, where it says prompt for the students. And then here is what your teachers would be able to view. The next type of item I'm going to add is a griddable. So on question type, I'm going to go to numerical response. Again, I can set my standards, my DOK levels. Let's set that at DOK 2. I can change the way my griddable looks for students, just like I did from my quick test key. This time, I'd like to make it floating and give them, let's say, 5 columns and allow negatives. So here's where I would put my question for the students. And then down in this blank box right here is where we're going to input our answer. So let's say our answer is 6.3 and we will create. So now I have 3 items added to this test. If for some reason I needed to go into any of these and make some changes, I can click my pencil tool. So let's go into constructed response and let's add an image. So I clicked my pencil tool. I'm going to put my cursor below my prompt, and on my edit tools, I'm going to go here to add an image. And so you would just find an image from your computer, click insert file, and now that image is here. We can use the little black box to enlarge or the opposite of enlarge, shrink.
Yeah.
Shrink our image.
De-large, enlarge, de-large.
Right. It's like, I don't want to go with shrink, but that's what it's like. And then we can go ahead and update. And now notice we have an image included here. So before I pass off to you, Jenny, anything else you want me to demo here before we go into
Yes, we had a question specific to adding a reading resource.
Oh, yeah.
So a reading passage. And so let's go over that real quick. And then also maybe how to link questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was my last step and I just forgot it for a moment. So the final thing you can do from the add item area is add a resource. So this is a really, really great feature. So notice you have a space for the title and a space for the actual text of your resource. So we'll title this The Big Apple. And then here is where the reading passage goes. So if you had a file in Word or somewhere that you could copy and paste, that could be a generous time saver for you. If you're creating something from scratch, you're definitely able to type. You can add images, add graphics here, just like we just showed on the constructed response item. And then this is not an actual test question for students. This is a resource for them to utilize to answer questions. So you notice here it says 0 linked items. So I'm just going to go ahead and link the 3 items that have already been built. To do that on the item, so here's the first item I built, this multiple choice. I have what looks like a little link here. I'm going to click that. And it's telling me the only resource I have on this assessment is the Big Apple. So if I select that, update, and now it has pulled these items together. So notice if I move my resource, it has moved the item with my resource. So it's linking those together so that they stay in that order. So if you are using online assessments and use randomization, it keeps it all together. Or if you're just trying to quickly change the order of things while you're building the assessment, it keeps those items together. So yes.
It does. And randomization is important for 2 reasons. I mean, linking items is important for 2 reasons. One is that if you use the randomization feature, it keeps the items tied to the resource in the online testing window. So your resource won't appear as like the 8th item on the test, but your questions to your resource are number 1 and number 2. So that's important, but then also how it displays for the student. If you have a resource with items attached to it, questions attached to it, the resource appears on the left-hand side of the screen and the questions, the student can scroll through them on the right-hand side of the screen. So it's really important to link your questions to your resources, even if you're not using the randomization feature, so that they display correctly for the students. And Tara, we have a question. I was going to cover this. I was going to add a start. We have a question about how do you make your reading passages, the margins work. Go ahead and go to that resource and click on the edit button there. And so from here, you have options to, again, align left, center, align right, and then block text. Those you can also tab or space over to do your margins. If you're asking about numbering in margins, that's trickier. It can populate funky when you do that. If you're trying to do that and it's not populating right, where you're numbering paragraphs or you're numbering, something, bulleting something, send a ticket to support@eduphoria.net or training@eduphoria.net, and we'll help you with that. But generally speaking, your margins can be, we don't have a margin tool like you would in Word, where you can say you want it indented 5 spaces, or you want a 1-inch margin or a 2-inch margin, but you can play around with it with, again, that spacing option. And that right there, that icon next to the left spacing, what does that do, Tara? I'm sorry, I don't even know. Is that just an indent? Yeah, increase indent. So that's just indenting everything, increasing your indent, but I don't think you can select the amount you want it indented. Okay.
So one of the questions I see in the chat is about adding a formula chart to an exam. So one of the things we're going to be playing around with are some different ways to use the resource to help with that. We don't have just a strict, easy answer for that right now. But we found out yesterday that one of the things coming down the line for development is to be able to upload a PDF. So that would be a way to include a resource like a formula chart with an assessment. So right now, there's not a direct way of doing that. You could use the resource as a workaround for that. You might have to do a little manipulation for it to be viewable the way that you want it to look for students. So I'm just going to demo one more time how to link an item. So with this constructed response, it's now above our resource. I'm going to click link the question, select my resource, the big apple, and click update. So notice now I have 2 linked items, my constructed response and my selected response. And even within these items that are linked, I can change the order. So I clicked on the little arrow and I flip-flop the order of these 2 questions that are linked to this resource. Anything else before I turn over to you, Jenny?
So someone's asking where is the button for adding a resource, and there's not a button for adding a resource. If you need to add a resource item type, you have to, add an item to the test and then select the resource item type. And so as far as what she mentioned, like uploading the science formula chart or the math formula chart, that isn't available yet. That will eventually be a button that will appear as like a PDF that a window that the kid could open and close like the calculator does in the online testing window. So yes, you can cut, can you cut and paste it is a tricky question. That depends on what the format is for your resource. If it's a Word document, you could certainly cut and paste the text. If it is in a PDF, you would need to convert that PDF to a Word document or to an image in order to be able to paste it in the resources tab. So you could add it as an image, but it would need to be in a JPEG or a PNG format. It cannot be added as a PDF as a resource.
Thank you for clarifying on that.
Okay, and someone else just asked, oral administration be available if you use a PDF or other formats. So if you use an image format, you can add alt text. Again, I don't know that we're going to get to cover that today. We're running low on time. But in our help section over online testing, there under virtual learning resources, there is a video over adding alt text to images for the text to speech feature. So you would need to do that in order for it to read an image. If we have time today, we'll cover it today.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and turn over to you, Jenny.
Okay, perfect. There's a couple of questions in there, Tara, that are a little bit like specific to a particular problem. I'm going to say for time's sake in this webinar, if you are having a specific issue with a specific test you have built, please submit a ticket. That's not something we can like open your test live and troubleshoot for you right now. And so it's a little hard for us to sometimes help you with those questions during a live webinar. Again, if you'll submit a ticket to support@eduphoria.net or training@eduphoria.net, we're happy to kind of dig into those problems and help you with that.
Yes.
Okay, oops, share screen. Yes, perfect. Okay, perfect. And so I'm going to cover adding questions from an item bank, which is a little simpler than adding your own questions that you've built from scratch, and some administration options. And we'll go until we run out of time. I'm going to log in as an administrator to do this. And I should have had a test pulled up already. I did not. Okay, so we're going to pretend I created this test new. It was a new blank test in Aware. And if I'm going to add items from an item bank, I'm going to again go back to that plus sign. It'll turn blue and I'm going to hit search item bank. From here, I can select a particular learning standards or learning standard, or I can choose to select all standards, or I could filter for a particular learning standard. So for right now, I'm going to choose a readiness standard. And once I have pulled questions for a particular learning standard, in this particular one, I have 428 questions for one particular learning standard. It's displaying 150. That's a lot of questions to go through. And so I can start to kind of filter. Let's say I'm looking specifically for STAR released questions. I can filter to that STAR released item bank. Or let's say I'm looking for numerical response or griddable questions. There's only 3 for that learning standard, or constructed responses. So I can use those filters to start narrowing down the questions that I'm looking for. The other thing that I can do is I can type keywords in. If you'll notice, all of these questions have keywords. So I can find particular questions with a keyword. So let's say that, 5.5A covers a lot of stuff. And again, 428 questions. And let's say I'm looking particularly for thermal energy questions. I can type in the word thermal and hit enter, and that will pull up questions that are either tagged with thermal energy or have the word thermal in the question or the answer choices. And so that does help me kind of filter down. We get that question a lot, particularly in districts that have access to many, many banks, that sometimes the number of questions is a good problem to have, but it's still a problem if you've got 428 questions to filter through to try to find what you're looking for. That can be a little cumbersome. So using that keyword search is a good way to start, or filtering down to specific item types. DOK filters are available. That said, not all items have been associated to the appropriate DOK. So many items are still defaulting to 1 or NA. And so at some point that will be a great filter to use. If I'm looking for, a particular question over a particular learning standard, and I know that I want to get to that DOK 3 level of questioning, filtering to DOK 3. Again, right now I can do this, and I've got some items because some items have been updated, but I'm not going to catch all items at this point that might be a DOK 3 at some point. So kind of know that going in. Once I find my items, I'm just going to click add question. And it looks like I got a couple of different item types here. And once I'm finished with this particular learning standard, I don't want to click this X right here. I'm going to click this X right here. This X right here will take me back to my test, and these questions will not be added to the test yet. If I click this X, I can exit out of that particular learning standard and leave my questions that I've selected in my shopping cart. And so another option I have for finding questions is to hit select all standard. It's going to pull up about a bajillion of them. That's a scientific term, by the way, bajillion. Okay, 6,400 questions. And so again, I can from here filter by bank. I could filter this. This is useful to display all standards if I'm looking in particular for star released items, or I'm building a benchmark over multiple learning standards. I could go in and say, I want to look only for star released items. And then in particular, I want to look for star released items from the 2017 test. And so typing that year in will filter down to star released items from 2017. And it looks like I have some English and some Spanish items here. And so I can add a couple of these questions.
Jenny, we do have a question in the chat about using the filter for English only. This might be a user-specific question to follow up on. Okay. But they're saying that when they filter for English only, they're still seeing Spanish, and in some cases, Spanish is populating at the top.
Okay. Yeah, again, without investigating that, we would need to know particularly what item banks your district has access to, what the security is set. That's a really specific question. And so there could be many reasons why that's happening. And we would need you probably just to submit a ticket so we can dig in a little bit on that. Okay. And look how some things are set up. So it's difficult. You should be able to use these language filters and filter, to Spanish only or English only questions. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and add these items to the test. And I want to show y'all something that is specific to language arts or English language arts. If I go in, so our reading and writing people, if you are looking to build a test using the item bank and you are a reading or, sorry, my dog just shook. Y'all heard that. If you are looking to add items to your test for ELA, reading or writing, the place to look for those questions is not in the item, it's not in the questions tab, it's in the resources tab. And so if I go here to search item bank and I change to 8th grade reading and language arts, we get a really common kind of, we need help question. And it's, I'm an 8th grade reading teacher and I have no questions in the item bank, or I have 10 questions in the item bank. And that is because the bulk of ELA questions are found in the resources tab. If you are building an ELA test, and ELA, right, that test that I had built, the primary subject for the test was science. But if I had started with ELA as the primary subject, it would have defaulted me to this resources tab. So we have different filters on the resources tab. Resources, again, are those reading passages that, you know, are utilized on reading tests, and there are questions linked to those reading passages. So from here, I can do some really cool things. I can go to genre and I can say literary fiction, and it's going to filter down to my literary fiction reading passages. And then from there, I could select particular learning standards, you know, based on that particular genre. So I could also just filter by standard. So depending on how you teach your content, if you're teaching by genre or if you're teaching by skill, you can find questions either based on the standard or based on the genre, and then standards within that genre. And so again, we'll see if that one has any. Okay, so I have 2 reading resources that are literary fiction, that have questions under 8.6 G that are assigned to them. To view those questions that are attached to resources, I just click that little caret and open up this window, and I can see the questions that are attached to that reading resource. So I can choose to add all the questions that are attached to the reading resource, or I could choose to, you know, just add 5 of those 19, which was probably more realistic. So either way works. So I can choose specific questions, or I can add all, and then I click add all to test. So again, these will automatically be linked to that particular resource. So here's a resource, the effects of sunlight on growth. They were added from an item bank. I can see that they're already linked to this resource. Again, that's important for online testing, for both randomization and the way that it appears. So I'm going to close this little test summary. So just like Tara said earlier, I can increase my screen real estate by closing the test summary. That kind of gives me a full screen to work with. And one of the things I'm always going to want to do is go through these constructed response items and make sure that my scoring protocol makes sense. So if I open that one, it's a constructed response item. I can see that what they've put in here for the min score and the max score is a 1 to 4. But if I look down here in my actual scoring criteria, I only have a 1 to 3. Well, I know inherently that every constructed response item needs to start with 0, because we need to be able to give no credit if a student skips an answer, you know, skips a question, or really doesn't meet any of those criteria. And then also the max score needs to match the max score here. And so always kind of review this scoring criteria, even if you've added it from the item bank. Always make sure that your scoring criteria matches your min score and max score on your assessment. So just words to the wise, if your min score is 1, you cannot give anybody a 0. So you're going to want to make sure the min score is 0 and that your max score aligns with the max score in the scoring guide. It's just something to double check when you are building a test. All right, so let's add, we'll do this real quick. Let's add alt text to an image. Dang it, I shouldn't have added those 19 questions. just stick to just, you know, 4. All right, so right here, I have an image on the test. I know that I'm going to utilize this test with text to speech, and text to speech doesn't know how to read an image. So it's going to do one of 2 things. If for some reason there's like an image quality thing in there, and sometimes there is like an image address, or, you know, it will read that. or it will pause over the image. And so I want to be sure that if I'm using this test for text to speech, that I tell the system what to say for an image. And so I'm going to click the edit button, and that was just the pencil. And then I'm going to double click on this image, and this little box opens up, and I can see right here in the alt text, I could actually go in and say state 1. And I'm going to put a period or a comma, and I'm going to give it several spaces. And then I'm going to say melting, period, space, 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 freezing. And so I'm going to type this the way I want it to be read. The reason why I'm putting the period or comma and several spaces after is I want the, automated voice to pause between those words. If you don't put those spaces or the period in between, it would say state 1, melting, freezing, state 2, evaporation, condensation, state 3. So I wanted to say state 1, melting, I really did that wrong. State 1, melting, state 2, evaporation, state 3, condensation. I want it to say it the way I would read it in person. And so putting the spaces in there allows for that to happen. All right, so I'm going to click OK. And, we're good on that. Do we have any questions about adding items to the test using the item bank?
No, we had one question at the beginning, but you covered it. It was about for ELA if resources automatically pulled linked items.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm kind of flying through this, but again, we're running out of time. I want to cover administration. So if I am a campus level or a district level admin, under the administration tabs, I have to do some things in order to administer this test. One of the things is that I have to assign the test to students in selected courses. And so for some reason when that was created, it didn't do that. Okay, so I'm going to assign the test to students in selected courses. It's a science test. So I see these science courses listed here. So let's go there. And let's say I'm looking here, but I don't see, I should have a second section of, pre-AP science, and I don't see it there. There is a way to fix that if you're the eduphoria administrator for your district, and we're not going to cover it today, but there is a way to fix it. If I am just the teacher or the campus person and I don't have access to fix that, but I still need to access that course, I'm going to go down here to all, and I'm going to view all the courses on the campus to find that other section. Again, there's an easy fix for that where it will show up under science. It's just not something we're going to cover today. If you want to know how to do that, you can send again an email to support@eduphoria.net or training@eduphoria.net, and we'll go over coding courses with you. But again, that's how I can find courses. It's a really common problem for courses to not show up under the administration tab. And again, there's a fix for it. So, but the workaround for that is just to select all in the meantime and pick your courses and go. I have a funny story. I'm not going to tell it for time, but that's how I got my job at Eduphoria. Anyway, so again, once I've selected the students who are going to take the test, under the collection tab, I have some options. I can preview online testing here, and I can print sample answer docs, which is a really cool feature. Teachers can do this as well under their administration options. And FYI, teachers don't have to do that previous step. The test is automatically assigned to students who are rostered to them. So they don't have to assign the test to a student in a particular course. The system does that for them. As an administrator, I'm going to want to enter in the administration dates. We really recommend that you pad this a little bit, particularly now with so many kids, learning virtually. If you want all this test administered in a 2-week window, give it 3 weeks or even 4 weeks. There's 2 reasons why. One, I think we all have to be a little bit forgiving of timetables during this time. And the second reason is that this student summary report is only available during this testing window. The student summary report is a report that pulls up when a kid submits their online test that tells them you missed number 1, you got number 2 right, you missed number 3, you got number 4 right, and so on. So it doesn't give them a score and it doesn't tell them the correct answer, but it allows them to see which questions they missed. If you are concerned about this report and possible sharing of information between students, either don't turn it on or turn it on after all kids have submitted their test. Once you turn it on, the student can still go back in. If you're in this administration window, they can still go back in and look at their review their responses. And so it's a pretty neat tool. Again, you can turn it on retroactively after everybody's submitted the test if you're worried about that, and they can view it and do their test corrections that way. So my advice on the administration window is allow time for everybody to take the test and then allow time for kids to go in and review their answers. You don't have to wait, but it is an option to wait to turn it on after the test has been submitted. This is where you can enable your calculator. You have basic and scientific. Right now, it's all or nothing. You're enabling it for everybody or not at all. There's no way to say particular students get it and don't. That is coming. It's not out yet. Right now, it's all or nothing. Again, you can enable the student summary report, and then you can also enable question randomization. So this means everybody sees the test in a different order. For data purposes, the order of the test is always the order of the test that it's created in. So it doesn't matter if they answered number 5 as number 1 is number 1. So it converts back to the order that that key was created in when the data it populates for those individual item response analysis. Okay, I'm not going to cover Lockdown Browser now. There has been a webinar over Lockdown Browser. I suspect there will be another webinar over Lockdown Browser. It's more than we have time for right now, but I do want to talk about teacher test. So teacher tests in Aware, if you are building a teacher test in Aware, you are the only one who can see the test and you are the only one who can see the data. In order for that test to become, that information from that test to become visible for your campus administration, your instructional coaches, your district level admin, that teacher test needs to be shared with a team. It needs to become a team test. Even if you are a team of one and you are the only one giving that test, you still need to take that test, that step to share the test with the team. Real quickly, I have 2 minutes. I'm going to show it. Actually, my clock is 2 minutes faster than Tara's clock. So we're going to go with Tara's clock. So I actually have 3 minutes now. If I am in as a teacher and I have created a test and it is filed in this teacher test file, but I want my administration to be able to see the test and see the data from the test, which is fairly common. I am going to go to the administration tab and I'm going to click this share with team. When I click the share with team, I'm going to choose a team that I've created. There's a create a new team down here option where teachers can go and create their teams. And so once that team is created, again, even if I am a team of one and I'm the only person on the team, I have to take this step to convert the test to like a campus level test. So I'm going to pick my team. I'm going to pick my test type and I'm going to hit convert to team test. That will move my test from teacher test to team test so that now essentially behaves like a campus level test. Notice that on this teacher option, even on the team test option, teachers don't have, that students tab where they have to assign it to students because again, it's automatically assigned to their students. And they don't have any of these, they have all the same options under the administration tab. They just don't have that students tab because they don't need it. All of these things are the same. We do recommend that you filter, whether you're a teacher or administrator, filter the language to the language that the test is supposed to be administered in. Spanish questions should be read in Spanish. English questions should be read in English. The online testing text to speech does not translate English questions to Spanish. So just so you know, it does Spanglish, but not Spanish. So keep that in mind. So we do recommend that you go ahead and specify this is an English language only test rather than allowing the kids to kind of toggle through those and play with it. And so again, randomization is available even as a teacher test, and that student summary report is available. If the student summary report that enabling it is grayed out in your district where you can't turn it on or off. It means it needs to be turned on at the test type level, and someone with district access needs to do that. And so again, there's a help article on it that explains really clearly. It's, if you go to Aware and you search summary, I think it's the first one that pops up. There's a help article on how to do it, or you can reach out to training@eduphoria.net or support@eduphoria.net. We'll show you how to turn that on. All right, any questions or anything you think of that I've missed, Tara?
I think you have gone through things thoroughly.
Sorry, it was really fast, but okay. Well, we're at 3 o'clock straight up, so. All right. So again, final questions. Again, if you have questions post-webinar, training@eduphoria.net or support@eduphoria.net, sending an email to either one of those addresses will get to us. And also you will get an email within 24 hours that has this webinar recorded. And our next webinar is calibrating and aligning teacher evaluation for the incentive allotment. And so for TIA, and that is next Wednesday, October 28th at 2 p.m. So I'm sure that will be Shanna, Paige, Joel, the whole Strive team. So we hope you can join that if that applies to you. And if that's it, y'all have a great week. We really appreciate you spending this hour with us.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone.